Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Yes indeed, time for another rock and read. Today, you will get to hear chapter 35 of It's So Easy and Otherwise by Duff McKagan. Let's find out what happens next. In the middle of May 1993, we headed back out for another summer swing through Europe. For the first 5 nights, in Israel, Turkey, Greece, and at 2 shows in England, Izzy rejoined the band to fill in for Gilby, who had broken his hand in a motorcycle accident just before we left. Crowds stopped the show for minutes on end to chant Izzy's name. It was great. Greek teenagers seemed to understand something we had lost track of to some extent. This was, or had been, first and foremost, a band of friends who believed in our music and in one another. Izzy and I had started out as neighbors who would take a city bus to get to a gig where we were the 4th band on a bill of 4 bands, just happy to be playing a gig with a band we believed in with everything we had. And we saw it through. Now I looked at Izzy and recognized the clarity he had, the sense of purpose behind his decisions. Izzy had his feet beneath him and could walk away, which he did again after those 5 shows. My feet felt stuck in cement or quicksand. I wanted what he had, but had no idea how to get it. Though I guess I didn't want sobriety badly enough to go to Izzy and ask him for help. That would have put me in a situation where I would have had to either follow through or fail. With Izzy gone and Gilby recuperated, we worked our way through soccer stadiums in Scandinavia, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Holland, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and France. Izzy's departure triggered a realization. Perhaps the simplest explanation for what was going on with Guns N' Roses was that the band members had stopped needing one another. Sure, we wanted to continue to make a living playing music, and these record sales weren't going to go on forever, but we no longer needed one another to ride ourselves out of poverty through our songs. Guns N' Roses didn't start out about money, but once we all had houses and cars, we just needed one another less. The layers of infrastructure and the assistants, bodyguards, and drivers were fine. We could afford not to deal directly with one another anymore. Pissed off? No problem. I have my own hotel room, my own home. Not working on new songs as a band? No problem. I'll rent a studio of my own. We had a management team. Oh, we'll take care of this. We'll take care of that. On this last European leg of the tour, we sometimes weren't all together in the same city, except for the performance itself. On a few occasions, we weren't even in the same country. Our plane could drop some of us here and others there. On July 5th, 1993, we all rendezvoused in Barcelona for a huge outdoor show at the Olympic Stadium. Axel came in from Venice. I returned from a visit with Linda to the Spanish island of Ibiza. Slash was already in Barcelona. After the opening sets, our manager Doug Goldstein sent an oddly formal request to see me and Slash before the show. This was unusual. When Slash and I arrived at the Vibe Room, one of the tour managers was sitting there waiting for us. The guy was clutching some papers. He put a slim stack of pages down in front of each of us. I leafed through it. It was a legal document giving Axl the right to continue to play as Guns N' Roses, even if either Slash or I, or both of us, were not part of it. Though it didn't affect our status as shareholders in the operation, Axl and Axl alone would control the name if we signed this agreement. What the? I said. Look, man, the tour manager said, the truth is, you guys are not in good shape. You know that yourselves. If one of you doesn't make it, nobody wants to have to spend years in court battling your families or whatever. That was not what it said, however. There was nothing about that in these documents. With the crowd outside already getting rowdy, the guy then implied Axel wouldn't go on stage that night unless we signed the documents. I pictured people getting hurt if a riot started. At least, that was my fear. And I was so exhausted. It felt as though I'd been dragging a house around behind me for the last 2 years. Besides, at the time, I never thought GNR could possibly exist without us. The idea seemed ridiculous, and in that case, maybe the documents didn't need to be fixed. I signed. So did Slash. Guns N' Roses, the trademark now owned by Axl, took the stage. The next day, I grabbed Doug Goldstein on the tarmac at the airport. I had woken up really upset about what had happened the previous night. Slash and I shouldn't have signed those papers, but management wouldn't let the whole thing go forward anyway, right? I shouted at Doug, saying he needed to fix things. "Look, Duff," he said, "you're a smart guy. I manage Guns N' Roses." "Yeah, I know, Doug, and that's why we have to—" "No, you're not getting it. I manage Guns N' Roses." "Are you trying to tell me you manage the name Guns N' Roses?" I was still a member of the band, not a paid hand. Slash and I still had the same equity stake as before. We had just relinquished control of the name. Doug looked at me with no expression. "You manage the guy who owns the name Guns N' Roses. Is that where you're going, Doug?" He shrugged. That was where he was going. I was apoplectic with rage. I couldn't even speak. We boarded the plane. Only 5 more shows in Europe. 5 more shows. You can make it. After 26 months, the final concerts of the Use Your Illusion tour appeared on the horizon. We had tacked on 2 shows in Argentina at the end of the European leg, and then it was over. Just 2 more flights to go now. Paris to Buenos Aires to LA. The finish line had come to seem like a tangible, physical threshold. I could practically see it out the window of the plane as we floated towards Argentina in mid-July 1993 for those last 2 shows. By this point, the members of the band had long since stopped showing up for sound check, so the crew would play our instruments, test the equipment, and set levels without us. For this, the crew had assembled a shadow band and even developed a signature tune, Crack Pipe, by an Atlantic act called the Coolies. The song was from an album called Doug, a spoof rock opera about a skinhead who bashes a gay chef, steals his cookbook, and becomes rich and famous. Of course, there's a downfall. It was an opera after all, and Crack Pipe came during that last section. On the night of the very last show, 3 hours elapsed after the opening band finished. No Axl. Please, can't this end without any more people getting hurt? Please. Audiences in South America tended to throw a lot of rocks, and with no sign of GNR, things were getting ugly. Our production manager gathered the guys who formed the crew band. "Get up there," he said. "You're playing." A huge scream went up from the audience as the crew band jogged out to their places and the entire stage set sprang to life. The band launched into a tune. The lights pulsed. Then the Jumbotron video screens lit up and showed McBob and the rest of the guys rocking to Crack Pipe. Suddenly, 50,000 people started shouting what must have been obscenities. Then Axl arrived. There would be no riot. When we finally took the stage for that last show in Argentina, I peered out at the crowd. This could be it. Remember this moment. Remember this scene, this stadium, these fans. We limped back to LA and quickly went our separate ways, back into our private lairs to lick our wounds. Except me. For me, it was straight off to rehearsals. Geffen had released Believe in Me while Guns N' Roses were still in Europe, and now I was off on my first solo tour. That's when Axl called me, telling me I was crazy to go back out. It's what I do, Axl. Besides, I wasn't going to sit still. Keep moving. Keep moving. After the incident a few months before with my coke dealer and his pregnant wife, I had quit coke. For the most part, that had stuck so far. It would be easier to stick with it on the road. I just had too many connections in LA, and my life there was intertwined with coke. Keep moving. The tour started with 3 showcase appearances in clubs in LA, San Francisco, and New York. And it started badly. I had switched from vodka to wine, but immediately found myself drinking about a case a day. Wine, 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 and blood. Blood in San Francisco when my wife Linda got into a scrap backstage and traded punches with another woman until teeth started rattling to the floor. Blood in New York as fistfights broke out in the audience. Then we flew to Europe to join the Scorpions tour. A fistfight broke out between a couple band members in an airport. Blood. Our lead guitar player pulled a knife on the bus driver in England. Talk of more blood. Blood, 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 and wine. I often had to travel alone to get to the next town early to do publicity. I showed up at a record signing in Sweden, swilling wine from the bottle. Got skewered in the local press for that. A lot of young fans in line for autographs. We played some inspired shows, but there were also times when I shouldn't have been up there playing. Times when I let it go too far, and my performance suffered. There I was in huge venues, playing with my own band, under my own name, not bringing my A game. What's your excuse now? At the end of that leg, I needed another guitar player. Couldn't keep the guy who attacked our driver. I called Paul Soldier, my old bandmate from 10 Minute Warning back in Seattle. I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years. He was sober. Want to tour with my band? He said yes. On to Japan we went. Bottles and bottles of wine each day. My innards burned. Tums. I need Tums. Sloppy on stage again. What the are you doing? Home to LAX. A long, long commercial flight. Oh. We had a break before heading back across the Pacific for a tour of Australia. I just can't do this anymore. I felt sick, really sick. The worst flu I'd ever had. Are you going to be that guy, a quitter? I picked up the phone and dialed the tour manager. I'm out. I can't do it anymore. I was that guy now. No tour. Fine. But I needed to keep moving. Seattle. Seattle. I have a house there. That's where I'll go. March 31st, 1994. At LAX, there was Kurt Cobain, looking as lost in the lonely, jagged maze of his mind as I was in mine. Then he was gone. Man, I really wish I'd asked you to come over to my house that night when we landed. I'm sorry. May 10th, the paralyzing pain, the unbearable pain, the pain. I'm going to suffer here alone. Andy, please let him come upstairs. I don't want to be alone. Dr. Thomas, Demerol, nothing. Demerol, nothing. Sheer panic. Emergency room. Help me. I begged over and over. Please, help me. Just help me. Help me, please. Well, that's the end of chapter 35. Let me know what you thought of this chapter in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.